Hi, John. So today we're here with Geothermal Rising Student Committee to interview my advisor, John O'Sullivan. So to begin, John, can you just introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm John O'Sullivan. I'm the co-director of the Geothermal Institute here at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. I was born in New Zealand and I studied here at the University of Auckland and also at Stanford in the USA. Yeah, I'm an engineer by training. I grew up, my family's really is full of teachers and professors, and we're all into the outdoors and also into nature and pretty environmentally minded. So geothermal was a really natural fit for someone who's into engineering and problem solving, but also into sort of the environment and sustainability and things. New Zealand, we're pretty lucky here in New Zealand. We've got a really high level of renewable energy, up over 80% in
Wow.
electricity generation.
Mhm.
And it's quite big in our growing up, you know a bit about these things, especially if you grew up around academics who are and like I did, who were already talking about these things. So
Yeah.
ended up here. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, your dad also worked in geothermal, right? So is that how you began your journey?
That's right. Yeah. So my dad, Professor Mike O'Sullivan, he also is from Auckland, New Zealand. He also studied in Auckland and then went off also to the US and studied. He went to Caltech and then did postdocs and over in Columbia. And then came back and helped set up the mathematical modeling department here in the University of Auckland, which is engineering, now called the Engineering Science Department. So I guess I grew up around, with a dad who'd done that studying abroad at top universities, and so I knew it was possible, and I always knew that was, you could come from tiny New Zealand where no one had ever heard of, and you could still go to the top universities in the US and the world, and you could still have an impact, and the other cool thing is I also saw, my dad made the choice to come home and try and make a difference in his own country, and that's also something that inspired me. That was always an option as well. So yeah, that all helped with that sort of journey.
Mhm. So in your journey, you went straight from Stanford to what was after you graduated from Stanford, what did you do?
I did do an extended stint away from engineering,
Hmm.
and then I lived in Europe for a while and worked as a consultant,
Hmm.
which, I learned a lot of valuable skills. I was pretty young when I left Stanford, and probably like a lot of about the same age as a bunch of you all watching this. Um, and so it was quite, for my own personal journey, it was really good for me to go and get some experience outside academia. And I was outside academia for 14 years,
Yeah. Wow.
in different companies. Not really in engineering tech or geothermal technology. Uh,
Hmm.
so I actually felt a pretty strong pull to come back to it when I got into my 30s,
Hmm.
and get back to uh, environmentally focused engineering.
Hmm.
So, and eventually came back into my home in geothermal. So yeah, and I think I feel pretty lucky that I got to have that
Yeah.
experience,
Hmm.
and got to live in a lot of interesting parts of the world and experience experience a lot of different cultures and a lot of different ways of thinking. So, and I think that's been really valuable for me here,
Hmm.
because geothermal is such an international field. there's and it's very diverse, the cultures and environments that you're working in when you're working in geothermal, and the people, the students and the colleagues. So I found that really invaluable, that experience spent outside my home country.
So how did you make that transition from like not being in geothermal to then going into geothermal? I know a lot of people that might be watching this are probably considering career changes or are in a transitional period of their lives. So like also like what advice would you have for them too?
That's a great question. And so I didn't study, I think I did one undergrad class that might have had some geothermal in it. And we didn't, the geothermal that we teach here is mostly all postgraduate, and that was the same as an undergraduate student. So I didn't have a lot of exposure. At Stanford, I did a little bit of environmental engineering, but I wasn't focused on geothermal at all there. And so I think, there aren't many places where you are trained from the start, if any. I mean, I think, we're one of the leading institutes for teaching geothermal, and we teach it as a postgraduate. So there isn't really a pathway where you just start doing geothermal at undergraduate. So my first bit of advice is don't worry if you haven't had an undergraduate focused in geothermal, then neither do I. And in fact, right up until the year before I started working in geothermal, I hadn't done any real experience in it. So again, I transitioned. I did my Ph.D. in modeling for wind energy, and so I transitioned to geothermal after that. Geothermal is a broad family. People come from every different background. There's pathways from the geosciences. There's pathways from engineering. There's pathways from economics, from social sciences. There's no one pathway. And so I guess my advice would be, if you're interested, get in touch with people and have a look, see what you think, because it's never, as long as you're passionate and interested and keen to learn, then you're in great shape to join the geothermal journey.
That's some great advice. And so like on that wavelength of like spewing out wisdom, what has been like one of your most challenging experiences, and how did you grow through that?
It's a good question. I think I'm really proud here. Our group here at the Geothermal Institute, we work really closely with industry, and our research and our even our teaching is heavily influenced by real problems that people in the geothermal industry are trying to solve. And I guess this is not just true of geothermal, it's true of whenever you start into your career. It's pretty scary that first time people make big decisions based on your advice, right? And so when it's important, everyone makes mistakes, and that's just part of life. But I think one of the things is a key thing is I've learned is not to overpromise, and to make sure you always stick to your ethics and your to your values. So because when you're solving industry problems, people are always pushing for the solutions quickly. They're pushing for solutions that there's an outcome that they want to see. It's really important to stick to your values and stick to your ethics, and give your best answer. It may not always be the answer people want to hear, but you're in much better shape. Everyone's in better shape when people give their best evidence-based answers, right? So, everyone loses if people exaggerate their estimates, then you're almost guaranteeing that you won't meet your estimates because they're exaggerated. And people are going to find out in the end anyway when it doesn't meet the targets. So, and that's quite, especially because I did have that period in consulting outside geothermal where, there's constant pressure to give the answers that people want.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite interesting transition to just go, okay, this is what you want to do is give your best answer and be honest, stick to your values, and that'll make it better for everyone. Because good answers, like knowing when a project is going to have trouble, is just as valuable as knowing when it's going to be a great success.
Yeah.
So I think that's been something, and it's something I learned from my mentors here. I've been really lucky to have great mentors who are really got a lot of integrity, scientific and academic integrity. So I think that's it's an important lesson, and that's a key piece of advice.
Yeah, and I mean, mentorship is very important. I feel like having you as a mentor has really helped me. And so it's like, what advice do you have like to give to someone who is probably struggling to find a mentor, is looking for it? Like, where can they look? Yeah.
That's a great question as well. No, I mean, I think my experience is people are pretty generous with their time. Everyone's time poor these days, but people are pretty generous, but people are also pretty savvy. So it's easy to spot when people genuine approach for advice and for to build a relationship, and it's pretty easy to spot when people sent out the same email to 1,000 people. So I'd say sort of pick the people you want to connect with carefully, learn a bit about them, and make some effort. Don't be discouraged if they don't reply immediately or reply at all. Definitely follow up. Don't just say, oh, well, I didn't hear back, so they're not interested, because people are just, everyone that's the modern world. And apologies to anyone out there if I have responded to any of your emails. Please email me again and I'll make sure to so I think being persistent, but doing your homework, being genuine and being persistent, it is my advice. And I think and don't be afraid to ask for follow-up. Like if someone's answered and said, hey, look, I'm not doing anything in that field of study at the moment, or that's not really my area. If you ask, well, could you recommend someone I could get in touch with? People are happy. I'm really happy to say, hey, well, I know this person, or I know that person, and that that's that word of mouth recommendations go a long way. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Yeah. So to pedal back, let's can you talk about your current role as the head of the Geothermal Institute and what that entails?
Yeah, okay. So me and Associate Professor Sadiq Zarouk took over from Rosalind Archer, who left the University of Auckland to go to Griffith University in Australia, and lead one of the engineering faculties there. And so, yeah, as the co-director, it's up to our co-directors, it's up to us to oversee the teaching and research and consulting side of things at the Geothermal Institute, and we do a lot of all three of them. We teach master's programs that, as you know, now it's just completed very successfully, and we have postgraduate certificate, which is a shorter program. It's essentially like the Masters of Energy, but without the research project. It's got a much shorter research project. That's quite good for people who don't, people in particularly in industry who might not have a full year they can take out to study. It's also quite good for people who maybe don't have recognized accreditation, because it can be, you can sign up, there's much lower entry criteria, so you can sign up for the postgraduate certificate, and then that can be a gateway to then carrying on and doing the Masters of Energy program. And we do short courses. I teach in Iceland at Reykjavik University over the last 4 years, and we've done short courses in Indonesia and Chile and Africa around reservoir engineering and reservoir modeling. Then there's a lot, we do outreach to schools and community here in New Zealand. I was just down in Taupo in the New Zealand's North Island at a geothermal week there with a team, and we were visiting schools and trying to inspire young people to get enthusiastic about geothermal. Just lots of fun. Research, we've got lots of smart people here working on interesting problems from geothermal. Like I said, it's mostly industry driven problems. So just some examples we're looking at, we've got doing research on how to re-inject CO2 in with your geothermal brine re-injection as a way of reducing CO2 emissions. We're looking at supercritical geothermal systems exploitation. So, and there's a whole load of other research programs. And consulting wise, we work directly for a lot of geothermal energy companies and other geothermal stakeholders, providing expert advice on how to manage their resource and how to identify new resources. So, yeah.
Wow, it sounds like you're a busy man. So how do you juggle teaching, consulting, and doing research?
I guess we are lucky because there's so much overlap.
Okay.
But it is busy, especially when classes are on. But then I feel really lucky as well, because industry supports us well. We've had a long relationship. The Geothermal Institute was started in 1978. So, and we've got long relationships with our partners out in industry. So they know when we say, well, we're teaching, we've got lots of teaching on at the moment. Often the people we're talking to came through the course. So they're very understanding. So when it's busy consulting, it's busy, but they understand when the teaching's busy, that the teaching's important. And then the research sort of naturally flows between the consulting, because there's a lot of research required to solve these problems. We're right at the cutting edge often, and then it flows naturally into teaching it to the students. So there's a really good sort of synergy of the three. That doesn't mean it's very busy. It's not very busy. Sorry, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally what I was gonna touch on, is like what unique experiences like kind of have blossomed from this synergy, and like, yeah, how have they benefited like the geothermal industry because of that,
Well, I think there's been lots of sort of advances in technology over the year. I'm really focused in the modeling side of things. So, and just in the last 5 years, as you and I have talked about, the modeling capabilities have just gone through the roof. We've got so much more power with cloud computing and new techniques that we've developed here in Auckland and with partners around the world, and that we're able to make much better forecasts, much more consistent forecasts with the geoscientific information. And sort of the outcome of that is there's a lot more evidence-based decision making goes on by the people that we're providing forecasts too. So it's sort of really directly, it provides direct value to the geothermal companies, and we see is that they use it much more, which is great, right? That's sort of what we want. It's not just an academic tool that gets used once in a while to see if it works. It gets used all the time. So we find that some of our partners use our sort of cutting edge research approaches, an operational tool now, and that's not just true of my modeling group. It's true of other relationships here at the Geothermal Institute. So it's that people usually come to us with a difficult problem they need help with, and we help them find a solution, and then they're using that technology and innovation straight away, and that's satisfying, and it's a great way to drive innovation in the industry, and it's a great way to ensure that academia and the university and the institute are really tightly coupled to industry needs as well. So
on that topic, what do you think are like some of the recent trends that you've been seeing in reservoir modeling, and what has your team been doing in terms of that?
Well, we've been over the last five or so years, we've been working on a new simulator. We've had a long and really good collaborative relationship with Berkeley on Tough 2, and we've contributed loads and worked a lot with them. But about 5 years ago, it was sort of time to try and build a new parallel tool ourselves. And since then, I've also worked on Tough 3, but at the time it hadn't started. And so, yeah, we're really pleased. We've got this tool, Waiwera. It's just a total game changer for doing simulation, and some of the things I mentioned, some of the predictive sort of power for forecasting is totally changed, because we can run realistic, complex models really pretty quickly, and especially now we're running it up in the cloud. We're able to run them massively parallelized, essentially, certainly quantification, and for making really robust decisions, and even for doing resource assessment. So that's really exciting. It means that we're able to test out a whole lot of sort of possible versions of geothermal systems based on the data you might have from geophysics or geochemistry, geological, early wellbore data, and test out a whole lot of possibilities to try to work out the potential of a exploration geothermal field. So that's really exciting, and as I said earlier, we're applying those methods in our partnerships with industry stakeholders already, and finding them really, really useful. We're also really interested in the potential for lower enthalpy resources, whether those are maybe some of the European settings or the basin settings and things, or if they're just some of the outflows in higher temperature geothermal systems, because that's obviously going to bring a whole lot more potential resource that could be used for lower temperature applications. So direct use, and I think there's a lot we can do now with this advanced modeling and uncertainty quantification to try to really explore the possibilities. The margins, you're dealing with lower enthalpy fluid, so there's less, the economics get trickier, and so you need to have better tools to make sure that what you're planning is going to work. So we're really excited about sort of working more on that in that space. We're continuing to push in supercritical, and and even looking at how we can use modeling to even look at what are the different options. If you can't do conventional geothermal reservoir management, do you go down an EGS path, or then is an unconventional loop technology, is that an option? So we're looking at that, and so I think that's going to be pretty interesting. There's a lot of challenges still ahead in the technology required to make sort of supercritical generation a reality, but I think the modeling side of things we can do a lot to help with. And I did mention we're looking at we're doing a lot of work on understanding geothermal wellbores. There are tens or hundreds of thousands of geothermal wells drilled around the world, but you'd be surprised how complex and hard to understand the physics of what goes on in a hot two-phase geothermal wellbore is. And we've made a lot of progress on making some good tools for understanding that are pretty very new and innovative, which we think are going to give the geothermal industry all over the world some real insight on how to optimize things better and how to run things better, and how to understand their resource better from sort of the limited data that you get out of a geothermal well.
Wow, that's really exciting. So on that note, are the tools that your team develop like open source for people to use?
Waiwera is open source, and that's one of the things it's an absolute game changer. So the fact that you could be running complex models anywhere in the world with a laptop connected to the internet is just that's amazing. And it's pretty new. We've only been doing it ourselves for the last 6 months, so it's really new. Waiwera, we've been it's tried and tested. We use it on all our commercial projects and a lot of our research projects. So having it running up in the cloud, it's a game changer. And and like I said, that uncertainty quantification, being able to run, if you want to run 1,000 models at once, go for it. It's amazing. And you don't have to worry about having access to a supercomputer. You don't have to worry about having a super fast desktop or something. So it's really, I'm really excited about that, almost making access to the top tools more equitable, in the developing world. And, even in New Zealand, there are different groups with different budgets, and it'll make it more equitable, and it'll mean the best technology is going to be available to everyone, hopefully. A lot of our tools are research tools, so they're not so much open source. Like I said, it's usually research that's been done in collaboration with industry. So sort of get that when you partner with us, you get that sort of early adopter, of the new tech, but then that usually filters fairly quickly through to being available for other people to partner with us and use. So I mean, again, the best thing is sort of get in touch. If you've got an interesting problem, we may already have something that could help with a solution. If not, we're always keen to work on it with partners, So
Wow, it's really exciting to hear that Waiwera kind of will potentially lower the barrier to entry for a lot of players to do reservoir modeling. What do you see for the future of reservoir modeling as cloud computing gets even better and better?
I think what I really want to see is it move into the operational space. In the grand scheme of things, reservoir modeling isn't very expensive. It's not expensive compared to drilling geothermal wells, and it can really provide good good advice on decision making. And so too often it's sort of used to justify starting a project, and then it's not used again until you need to expand the project or ask for more money or do some sort of permitting. And that means that you're really missing out on using a valuable tool. I think, some of our partners would just say, being able to use this tool, this modeling tool, in an operational way, using it all the time, they get so much value. And it's and I'd like to see that become really normalized. And so removing this technology barrier, I think that will go a long way to normalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that so that's really exciting. I think there are the other exciting thing is I think that having tools that work well and work quickly, like Waiwera, means that you're able to work more closely and more collaboratively with the other scientists and engineers. And so I think that there's potential that you see better science and engineering done because you're able to, it doesn't take 6 months to make a model and then produce some results. We do that in a matter of weeks, and then that means that you're bouncing back and forth with the other scientists and engineers and testing out more ideas, and it's a much more collaborative way to work, which makes it much more robust. We end up with a lot more good science, geoscience included in our models, which means we get better forecasts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm hoping to see it be, like I say, normalized, that modeling gets used operationally. I mean, I think that's in most other industries, modeling, forecasting is part of every life, and I'd like to see us get to the same place. And as I say, I think the ability to make more realistic, more consistent models that are consistent with the geoscience, because we've got these more powerful tools. I think that's going to hopefully lead to better overall modeling. Yeah.
Wow, so that's some exciting stuff. Okay, well, we're reaching the end point of this interview. It was an amazing pleasure to have you here and just, talk about all this type of stuff. To close, I just want you to just give any leftover advice that you might have to any students who are looking to get their feet wet in geothermal. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, Noe, and the team for inviting me to have this interview, and it's always great to talk. And I hope to see you all at the next GRC, or here in New Zealand, or somewhere else around the world. I'd say, keep at it. One of the things I think I've learned the most from my dad, my mentor, is never stop learning, and geothermal is a great space to be in for that, because it's evolving. It's definitely part of the solution. It's not the solution to our problems, but it's part of the solution, and it's got so much going for it in terms of indigenous energy security and equitable access to energy and all of those things. So I think, go for it, and think about it. It's something that it's a great global community. I think you meet lots of passionate people, lots of smart, passionate people who care about their community and the planet. And so get stuck, and and never. There's no such thing as a bad question. And people are always. You'll find most people are always willing to talk and engage. So go for it.
Well, thank you, John, for taking time out of your schedule to talk with me and to talk with all of us. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Noe. We'll see you soon, one way or another.
Okay.
All right.